This is English shorthand dictation number 180 and the dictation speed is 120 words per minute. Ready? Start. It seems to me that there are only two important questions which this round table conference is going to consider. One question is whether India should have a responsible government, and the second question is to what people that government should be responsible. In the plenary session, we all joined in one chorus in demanding that India should have a responsible form of government, and I, for one, speaking on behalf of the depressed classes in that plenary session, joined with my friends sitting opposite in demanding responsible government for India. However, when I did so, I was under the impression that the Indian people who came to represent their country at this round table conference were not only united in making a demand for responsible government for India, but were also united in the view as to whom that government should be responsible. I am sorry to say that I have been deluded. I find now that although some of our people would desire me and others to join them in their demand for dominion status, they do not join with us in demanding that the government which will be set up under that dominion status shall be responsible to the people of India as a whole. I never thought there would be this division of opinion, and that I should have to stand up to defend the position we take. Sir, speaking on behalf of the depressed classes, I cannot honestly consent to responsible government or to dominion status unless I can be sure that the people for whom I speak are to have a place in that constitution. I must make that fact plain to all my friends. As an objection has been raised to the proposal for adult suffrage by some of my friends, I propose to deal with the arguments brought forward against it. One of the arguments brought forward was that we should follow the precedent laid down in this country, that adult suffrage should be reached by stages. It is suggested that we should follow the stages adopted in this country, that adult suffrage should be reached by stages. It is suggested that we should follow the stages adopted in this country since 1832. Those who take their stand on the political history of enfranchisement in this country seem to think that there was some philosophical course of action thought out by the English people in devising the steps that were taken by them in enfranchising the people from 1832 onwards. I do not know whether those who use that argument believe that there was any philosophical belief behind that fact, but I should like to point out to my friends who base their arguments upon this fact that if you read the political history of England, you will find that not only was there no philosophical belief which determined the stages that were taken by the British people, but the question of franchise was treated in this country as a mere matter of party politics. Each party tried to extend the franchise because it thought that as a political catchword it would influence and augment that party. Perhaps that will be news to my friend who used that argument with satisfaction to himself, feeling that he is placing an insuperable obstacle in our path. We will be perhaps pleased to find that one of the great steps in the political enfranchisement of the people of England was taken by a conservative government in this country and not by the liberals or the radicals. The second thing I should like to point out to my friends is this. Does he really mean to tell us that because the franchise in this country was limited, the government produced under that franchise was a good government, the object of which was the welfare of the people and the prosperity of the masses? Is that the inference he wants to draw from that fact? Surely that is not the case. If my friend only takes the trouble of reading the social and political history of England, he will certainly find that the unreformed parliament was not a blessing to anyone. Thirdly, I should like to point out to my friend who thinks that the people of India ought not to be given adult suffrage because they are not fit for it, that the only alternative for him is to go back to India and not to demand dominion status or responsible government. If it is the view of my friends that the Indian people are not fit to take upon themselves the responsibilities of government, then I do not understand in whose name he asks for responsible government. Is it for himself? The only argument in favor of responsible government and in favor of dominion status is the assumption which must constitute the basis of any such argument, that the people of India are fit to undertake the responsibility of government. If my friend does not believe that the Indian people are capable of exercising that responsibility, then the only conclusion is that the Indian people cannot have dominion status and cannot have responsibility. The second argument that was brought forward was that although adult suffrage may be an ideal, it cannot be brought into effect at the present moment because we do not have the machinery to give effect to it. Now, I have great sympathy with that argument, but I should like to point out that there are considerations in opposition to that view. Let us understand what the franchise does really mean. Surely the franchise does not mean a mere matter of the ballot box, does not mean a mere matter of polling booths and the placing of polling officers there. The franchise means something more vital than that. Sir, as I understand it, to me the suffrage and the franchise are nothing else but the right of self-defense. It means that you will create a legislature which will have the amplest power of passing laws which will affect the life, liberty and property of the people. If your legislature is going to have that power of affecting your life in these most vital matters, then surely every individual who is going to be subject to that legislation ought to have the power to defend himself against laws which will probably in the circumstances invade his liberty, his life and his property. It is not a mere question of the ballot box. It is not a mere question of polling booths. If I understand the franchise, I understand it to be the right to regulate the terms of what one might call associated life in society. That is the essence of the franchise. When you give a man the franchise, what you mean is that you give him power to regulate the terms on which he will live in relation with other individuals in society. Now, if that is the meaning of the suffrage, surely you cannot give the higher classes the power to regulate the terms of associated life and leave the lower classes at their mercy. They too must have the power to regulate the terms of associated life, just as the capitalist must have the power to dictate how he shall live on terms of associated life with the labor is also entitled to have the power to regulate the terms on which he shall live with his capitalist master.